Sarah Dusick from Under Canvas tells us that every successful business has a great vision and mission. They know exactly which direction they're going in. They know what they need to do. And this is absolutely the case for my next guest. Karen Baldock with her husband have designed the most amazing immersion travel experience. An immersion travel experience allows the tourist to have a very intimate interaction with authentic cultural experiences that are local to the area in which they are staying. It's a fantastic way for them to take home more than just memories. And speaking to Karen in this episode, she got me so excited to want to visit because of the way she was talking with such passion about what her and John have been building on their land. This is an episode you will not want to miss. It really is incredible, everything they have done as a family in setting up their business, and you will find it so inspirational. This is episode 9. Welcome to the Glamping Americas podcast, the place for inspiration about the business of upscale camping, glamping, and luxury outdoor guest accommodations. I'm Sarah Riley from the Glamping Academy, and I'm working with my friends at the Glamping Show Americas to share everything you need to know about new trends, events, business models, and investment potential in the rapidly growing world of luxury camping that delivers an experience. Interest in this industry is exploding, so if you want to be the first to find out what's hot and what's not, subscribe here and check out the show notes for more exciting news and links. And be sure to add the next Glamping Show Americas to your calendar for the 3rd and 4th of October near Denver, Colorado, and I'll see you there. I can't wait. Karen, it is amazing to have you join me here today for the podcast. I have followed what you and John have been doing and your vision and everything else for your sanctuary. And I'm now sitting looking at you with trees behind you, beautiful blue sky. Tell me where you are.
Sure. So thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm really excited to catch up with you as it has been a while. So behind me, what you see is the view of Tebbets Mountain, which is on the backside of our Wild Child yurt. So the yurt is one of many structures that are actively under construction right now on the sanctuary. And the yurt is the only yurt on the property, but it's where we'll have our programming for guest children. So if, grown-ups want to get away and have a little day of hiking or enjoying some outdoor recreation to themselves, they can drop their kids off and know that there's some really fun and safe programming for the kids to do things like foraging or exploring the streams, learn some nature literacy skills, all kinds of great things. So the yurt is sort of the home base for that kids programming.
So you've just said there that it's the Wild Child Yurt, and also that your sanctuary is the Coal Burned Spoon Sanctuary. Now, you obviously have a real way with names, but can you explain what Coal Burned Spoon actually means?
Yes, certainly. So I think it's helpful for people to understand because it really exemplifies what we're all about. So a coal burn spoon, what it physically is a handcrafted spoon that one makes. You start with a little chunk of raw wood, usually cedar. And in the beginning, it just sort of looks like a block, and you slowly whittle it down towards the shape of a spoon. And when you get to the point that you need the bowl, you actually have to take a piece of coal from a fire, a good sized chunk, and set it in that bowl. And then you just blow on that coal, and it slowly burns out the round bowl part of the spoon. And when you get it where you want it, you take that chunk of coal out, and then you kind of sand the whole thing down. And you have this really beautiful, functional, handcrafted spoon. So the whole process takes a couple of hours, maybe 3 or 4 hours. And we felt that the coal burn spoon was just a great representation of everything that we stand for. So in one way, it's a shout out to the culinary side of things. We're a very culinary focused accommodation. So the spoon references that. It's also a shout out to just eating in general is so central to what we're doing, whether it's foraging or cooking with local sustainable farm ingredients in the meal kits that we have for our guests. So there's that eating and cooking side of it. And then also it really to us symbolized slowing down, right? Because the process takes a long time. Slowing down to get back in touch with the things that sustain you. So, in the forest, taking an actual something that used to be a tree, taking a piece of that tree, turning it into a spoon. There's a real direct connection there between the self, the person, and nature. And so we're trying actively to make all those connections where we can. So we just felt that a coal burn spoon and that process was a really great symbol of everything we stand for: slowing down, connection to nature, and just really enjoying eating in the process of eating and cooking.
Well, as somebody who loves eating and who loves making things, actually, it sounds perfect. And are you going to allow people to do that whenever they stay? Are they actually going to be able to craft their own spoon and take it home?
Yes, absolutely. You got to have the namesake keepsake. So basically once a week we plan to have a coal burn spoon class. So we've got a couple different great, amazing guest teachers lined up who've been doing this for years, and who you can sit and enjoy, with a beverage by the fire, enjoy the process of making your very own coal burn spoon to take home.
But where has this idea come from to actually make something out of wood and coal?
Yeah, so I think the process in general of making things from nature is not unique to Maine, right? Generally speaking, this is what humans have done for thousands of years. But in our area, I think, things get materials specific, right? So for us, cedar is abundant and softwoods are abundant. And so really any of those materials kind of lend to what the spoon looks like. But there has been really a renaissance in Maine, which I think is really fantastic, about these sort of, primitive skills. There's a lot of different terms. People give them ancestral skills. I like primitive skills. The term is a little bit contentious. People think it's derogatory, but I like it in the sense of its Latin roots, right? Primitive just means first, primo. So they're the first skills that humans had. And so we have a lot of classes planned along those lines. And I think in Maine, because we've been experiencing this like rebirth of all of these classes, the coal burn spoon was also relevant in that way. John and I took a coal burn spoon making class about a half a decade ago, and that was what inspired us to really kind of dig into that, that movement. And so, yeah, maybe not specific to Maine in terms of gathering materials from nature and turning them into something usable, but the way that we do it and what it's made out of is relevant to each region.
I know that you've not done it for this reason, but it's also an incredibly clever marketing technique as well, isn't it? Because you know that those guests of yours are going to be taking that spoon away with them. And every time they look at it or they use it, they're going to be remembering when they stayed with you. And it's going to help them remember your name, which is very memorable. And that's going to encourage them to come back again and seek those experiences that they had with you the first time. So where did the idea come from for your business and for you to be located where you are? Tell me the story about how that came about.
Sure. Yeah. So John's background is in building. He's a career builder. I was a career farmer and food systems person. And we basically just decided, we came to a point in our lives where we said, you know what, we want to combine forces and work together. Every day he would go off and do his building and I would go off and do my farming. And we loved what we were doing respectively, but wanted to do something together at this point in our lives. And also, something that more directly spoke to our passions and our skill sets, kind of honing that in a little bit. And we came up with this idea of glamping. It was in the US 5 years ago. Glamping was still pretty like brand new. I know it's been around a little bit longer for you guys in the UK. But it was relatively new, but we loved the idea. We both had tree houses as children and really enjoyed them. And so we knew we wanted to somehow incorporate tree houses as a structure. I love food. We both love food and eating. And so we knew that sustainable ag and foraging would be part of this venture. And so we kind of started just like building in our mind's eye, what did we want this to look like? And I will say, it's been years now, 4 years since we first came up with the idea. Although it's evolved, the core of it has kind of stayed the same. So we said, look, we're going to do some tree houses. There's going to be meal kits because we already had done meal kits on our farm to, a fair degree of success. People really enjoyed them. And we said, all right, how can we put this all together? So we set out to find the right site. and we had this list of criteria, and that has remained largely unchanged. And now we're here, right? The criteria was we wanted it to be at least 100 acres, remote. We wanted there to be really great, beautiful views from mountains. So we knew we wanted some topography and not just flat. Preferably a water feature, which now, of course, we are on this site with beautiful mountain streams and plunge pools, and there's Twitchell Pond at the base of our mountain for water recreation. And most importantly, though, we just knew that the site had to have what we called the magic. So it was just a feeling you got, we visited probably about 50 sites that throughout southern Maine. We knew we wanted to be in our home state of Maine and kind of share that piece of the world with the rest of the world, show everybody what Maine was about. And when we looked around at different sites, it was like bushwhacking, snowmobiling, hiking. I mean, these were some raw, land sites that we were investigating. And we'd get there and some of them would just kind of fall flat and be like, well, it's, the trees were harvested a few years ago and it looks kind of scraggly in here, or maybe the water was kind of stagnant or whatever. And then other sites, you'd go, oh, wow, there's sort of just a magical feeling when you visited it. But when we came to this site, it was actually a little far out of our comfort zone of the region that we wanted to be in. We were trying to stay a little closer to southern Maine. And this is in western Maine where we are now. But when we came here, it was absolutely obvious. Like, we have found the unicorn. It is so beautiful. It had the magic. It was just a feeling that you get when you walk around, that something special is meant to be here. The trees were beautiful. The topography was beautiful. The streams, and there was waterfalls and big boulders in the woods. And even better, as a bonus, Mount Abram, which is a family ski resort, was directly abutting the property. So we have, skiing opportunities in the winter if families want to do that. We have there's a mountain bike park there. So in the summer, it's a year-round thing there at Mount Abram. So there's mountain biking available next door as well. So added bonus. So all of these elements combined, and we just said, this is it. This is the place. So, and at 500 acres, 5 times the size that we were really hoping to have it. So at the end of the day, this was the one, and I'm so thrilled to be here.
The magic you're talking about there, often it's referred to as the genius loci. Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't.
It comes from ancient beliefs. And the whole idea is it's the genius of the land. So it's the spirit of the land, and it's actually there and it's in existence. And the idea for your land and what you're going to develop is very much come up with and created while walking around the land and feeling that spirit and feeling the magic, and using that to design your layout and design the types of structures you're going to have in place and the kinds of activities you're going to have for your guests. Is that something that you think you did through that whole process of you coming up with the idea?
Oh, yes. I mean, that couldn't explain it better, actually. One thing that's been really interesting about this process is that, I think in the beginning, you have to start somewhere, right? So you say, all right, well, we want, X amount of tree houses and X amount of cabins. And, where are we going to put them? You've got this big blank canvas. And so you say, well, there's some logging roads here. Let's just start with those roads and look off those roads. And maybe on a map, for your civil engineers, you start to plunk, well, we'll put one here, one here, one here, and one here. And it's sort of arbitrary. But what happens as you explore the land and you get to know it better is the site speaks to you, and you go somewhere and you go, oh my God, look, these trees are just asking for a tree house. There's this incredible view right there. And there are these 2 huge, gorgeous hemlocks that are, 16, 18 inches in diameter. Like, yes, let's put one here. So everything about this venture has been so site specific. The land tells you what to do. Our journey has been long, compared to most people, I think. But for us, everyone has their own personal journey, right? And for us, I can't imagine getting to where we are now without having gone through this long and slow process. I don't think it has to mean that for every glamping business startup. Lots of people just get right to it and jump right in, and I'm sure they have great success as well. But it's just who John and I are. We're slow people. We like thinking things through and really becoming in tune with them. So this process of learning our site, because the site truly is so enormous that it's taken a long time to get to know it. And let it tell us what it wants. And so now I feel like the the entire place is so much better for having had that process. And I'm just grateful that we were able to go through that, and so that now we can, have these features. We have one of our features is an amenity called the yoga boulders, and we found these just huge, enormous boulders that were on either side of a stream, that the way that they fell was almost in these tiers, right? So we're talking gigantic boulders, like the size of a small house, and maybe a tiny house. And in between them, called out for these like platforms. John and I looked at it, and I was like, because we thought, oh, what a great place to do yoga or meditate by this stream in the forest. But where would you do it? And oh, look, right here, we could put these different tiers of platforms in and scribe them to the boulders, and then have it come up onto the walking path that was right nearby. So you could get there easily from one of the units down a little foot trail. And oh, how cool was that? So then that's how that one revealed itself to us. Another one was, we really wanted to do the traditional Nordic fire and ice experience of having a cold water immersion plunge and then being able to get in a hot sauna after and perhaps go back and forth. And I had never done this until April. I had my first experience this April, and it was so amazing. So we found over the winter when we were hiking around, we knew we wanted to do this, but we didn't, just until this past spring, we didn't have a site. And hiking around this winter, we found this spot where even in the middle of winter, it was late February, and there was water running. Not all streams are year-round on the mountain. Many of them are seasonal, but this is one of the 2 year-round streams we have. And it was just this gorgeous place that felt like you were in magical paradise, with a waterfall coming down between 2 boulders, beautiful old softwood evergreen trees all around. And one place in the stream, it looked like it was designed for it to be a swimming pool. It was just, the waterfall came down and it opened up into a big, maybe 20-foot wide plunge pool. And we said, oh my God, this is where it's got to go. This is going to be the plunge pool. So in Maine, we had this weird week in April where it was like 80 degrees. It's never that warm in April. And so because the outside, ambient temperature was very warm, I had the bravery and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go get in that water. Now, mind you, Sarah, this water was snow about 10 minutes ago. It melted and went into this pool. There was still snow on the ground in little patches. And I had the kids with me. I said, let's do it. So I put my foot in first, and I said, ooh, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. It was stinging. My feet turned red. But then I said, all right, I had done a little research. I said, okay, let me go back and forth a little, because your body does acclimate. And so then I went in up to my knees, and then I got out, and I did that a few times. And after about 15 minutes, I built up the courage, went right in up to my neck. You got to do your breathing, concentrate on your breathing. Woo! That was just very invigorating. But the most amazing part of it was actually surprisingly afterwards. You get out and your body is just sort of, I don't know how to explain it. It's like reset in this way, where you now just have this sort of humming, like joyous feeling throughout the day after that. Like you are just fresh and ready for anything. So I loved that experience. And that, of course, is how the site spoke to us. We call that Moon Soak Cove, that little plunge pool area. And that is where we decided to put that. So as we've learned the land, we've had this really great experience of just finding these places that said, oh, this should go here. So
that is absolutely on trend at the moment. That whole plunging into ice cold water and feeling the benefits, so good for your health. And I am assuming you've heard of the Wim Hof method, which is all about that. It's massive over here in Europe. And it's something that guests really love doing as well. It's stepping out of their comfort zone. It's doing something they may not necessarily do when they're at home. It's giving them an experience that they'll remember forever, images and pictures of them and their families doing this crazy thing they've never done before. And that's how places are remembered and talked about. And that's how you get that wonderful promotion and that chain reaction of people explaining these experiences they've had. So is this how you've set out, or is this literally, this is the power behind your passion? Is that what you would say?
That's a great question. I really think that in the beginning, we had this core idea, which the spirit of that idea and the intention of that idea is unchanged. That was the beginning. That was what drew us to this place. That was what helped us create this vision, was this core idea of connection to nature, connection to the things that sustain you, And importantly, just making it more accessible to more people, right? Because I think sometimes nature can feel a little scary to people. The idea of staying in a tent or something that at 14 degrees doesn't really intrigue people. But maybe if you're in a cozy cabin and it's 14 degrees, it's not outside, it's not so bad. And you'd try that. So we're trying to make it more accessible to people. All of those core things, the food, the nature, the slowing down, importantly, taking a pause, being present where you are. Those are all part of the core idea, which has remained unchanged. What has been fun to sort of wrestle with in a playful way as the venture has evolved is what that looks like. How is that going to manifest? Are we going to do mostly tree houses or mostly cabins? Are we going to what are the amenities that we're going to have? What will the meal kits look like? Are we going to use all sustainable agriculture from the local area as the input for our meal kits? Or how much off of our own land can we actually pull in and do these scavenger hunt meal kits where we say, well, for this meal kit, we're going to give you most of the ingredients to cook with, but you have to find maybe the blueberries that are going to go in your pancakes, or some, pine needles that are going to go in your special tea for breakfast, etc. So find as we've, played with it and learned the land, those different things have gotten more color and changed and evolved a little, but the core idea is truly the same as what we set out to do.
So it sounds very much like you have to be an early riser and running to the blueberry patch to be able to get the best pancakes at your place. That's for sure. First come, first served.
Well, yeah. And so we've already thought of that, actually. I'm a very detail oriented person. So I thought to myself, about a couple of years ago, we said, what is this going to be? Literally just that, like, will there be enough for all guests to get it? And do we want to make sure that, we're interacting with the land in a sustainable way and not, the whole idea is not to, we're not just going to plow things down and plant a blueberry field so there's enough for everybody. That's just regular old ag, right? And we're trying to have this like gentle light touch on the land, but how can we do it in a way like maybe tailor certain areas of the land to encourage, like, oh, there's already a blueberry patch here, well, let's cut back some of these oaks that are encroaching and let this patch expand. And so for 2 years now, we've been slowly installing more edibles, all native things. We don't do anything that wouldn't grow here naturally. We're very fortunate in Maine. We have the Maine Audubon and the Wild Seed Project, which both have native plants for sale and seedlings. So we've added some ramps, which are wild onions that grow here in Maine. We've added fiddleheads. We have encouraged blueberry patches, alpine strawberry patches. Our next step is to work on encouraging some of the active fungi network. So there's lots of beautiful mushrooms. We have chanterelles and black trumpets and medicine mushrooms like reishi and chaga, all that grow naturally here. And we're trying to encourage and reestablish areas that we're kind of, could use a little bolstering without doing so in a way that's negatively impactful to the land. Just a really gentle, light touch. And so we have actually a position that I'm actively filling right now. She's coming tomorrow to be this person who is mapping all of our existing edibles that are on the site right now and making a plan for which ones we want to continue to increase and encourage so that we can actually give our guests a map, kind of like a little cheat sheet of here is the edible trail network, and you can go here to find the best, wine cap mushrooms, and you can go here to find the best dewberries, etc. So that's really kind of, we're actually we try and give our guests a leg up, right? We want them to have a positive and fun experience and not be just sort of sweating out in the woods like, I've only found 2 blueberries, I'm going to starve, right? That's not going to happen when you come here. It's going to be abundant and enough for everybody. But that's a really great question, one that I think a lot of people wonder about.
A little bit of friendly rivalry between guests isn't a bad thing. But it's quite interesting because what you're talking about there is educating your guests on things that they may never have had before. So you're talking about chaga mushrooms. I mean, I have that every day in a tea. And yet many people don't understand what the king of mushrooms is, the benefits, the health benefits, what you should look out for when you're getting them. how you use them, recipes, all this kind of stuff. And you're going to be sharing that with your guests. So they're potentially going to go home and then start doing exactly the same. Is that part of your vision as well, that people start kind of incorporating these new skills?
It is, yeah. And you've really picked up on sort of another core theme there. So one thing that I see happening, and there's something for everybody in the glamping world, right? And so some people really do like that super indulgent experience of being totally pampered and everything is sort of brought to you. And there's lots of great offerings out there that cater to that, demographic of people who like that. But for the Colburn and Spoon Sanctuary, one thing we're trying to do is create a place for people who really just want to dig in and learn a little bit more and be a little bit more engaged, push their comfort zone, learn new skills, just kind of be a part and active co-creator in their experience, as opposed to, sometimes, hey, you just need to check out and be pampered. But this is a little bit more active and participatory is our goal. We want our guests to have ownership in their experience. So we like to say that as opposed to giving you the silver platter, which is one model, we give you the tool belt, right? So we're giving you the tools to succeed so that you can learn how to cook these meals when you go home. I mean, that's my greatest wish and my greatest intention is that in every meal kit we give, in every class we teach, in every experience people have here, they are taking away skills that they can deploy in their lives at home that will enrich their lives and make them better. That's really an active goal of what we're doing here. So I'm so glad that you picked up on that.
I absolutely love that. That is completely and utterly what I love to do in my spare time and my children, and to encourage them to learn and develop. But what you're talking about here as well is healthy living and being outside, being in nature, learning to love nature more. So hopefully you'll be also generating people who look after nature in the future. But there's also a lot of wellness things you're talking about there. So helping people understand the benefits of their surroundings and what they can eat from their surroundings. You're clearly very knowledgeable about food and everything else. Is wellness something that you're going to be looking at providing in more services, or are you hoping that people will do their own things, such as dipping in the cold water? How have you thought through that aspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think right now, for the foreseeable future, the wellness aspect is sort of just baked in to our whole process so that it ends up happening naturally. I think that's kind of our goal, is that it's sort of, you'll be in the middle of doing something here because it's just fun, and then realize, oh, wow, I'm also having this amazing health benefit from it. So it's interesting because I think a lot of places really do seek to say, this is about wellness. We have a spa or something that is actively designed to, help you do these wellness related things for your body. And I think ours is more, at least for the time being, just like I said, like baked in, where it's part of the process and you experience the benefits, and maybe they even surprise you in a way that instead of like being told like this is good for you, so do it. It's more just like you're doing it because it's enjoyable, and then you experience some great benefits.
I like doing stand-up paddleboarding and surfing and being in the water because I live right by the sea. And all of that's exercise, all of that's de-stressing, all of it is kind of wellness pursuits, but it's a hobby and I really enjoy it. So it doesn't actually feel like exercise at all. And it's something that becomes the regular, whenever the conditions are right for me, that's when it happens. And you're talking about that exact same thing, aren't you? That when they come to you and they stay with you, they're involved in these activities. They're all essentially wellness activities. And yet that's not what you're labeling it as. Wellness in the US is huge, isn't it? It's an industry, it's massive. Do you think that's helped evolve the glamping industry in some ways?
I do. I think that the two are completely interconnected. I think that the reason we're seeing so much interest in glamping and being in the outdoors now, this sort of renewed wave, is, a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's the pandemic. Everyone was inside. Now we want to be out. I'm sure that is absolutely a part of it. But it's also, as I see it, I mean, I'm a big picture thinker, and I feel like in the long term, over time, humans have become really just sort of divorced from their surroundings. And that has created a spidering sort of web of, I'll call it fragmentation, whether it's in the food system or in our health. But all of those things are connected to, I think, our increasing disconnection from our natural surroundings. And the more that people are realizing, especially here in the United States, there all of these diet-related illnesses that we don't even know where they came from or what their root is, were so far from this core of connection to the things that sustain us, that those are this spidering web of dysfunction happens. And the more, and people are realizing, what, there is a way out of this. And it's not, necessarily what the pharmaceutical industry would prescribe to us. There is a lot that we can do for ourselves just by reconnecting to our natural surroundings, eating the food that comes from this land naturally, becoming native to the place that you're in, which to me really means being of that land, eating the foods of that land, understanding the flora and the fauna of that land, working in harmony with them as opposed to trying to dominate them or make your place with them excluded, finding ways to interact with them that are healthy and safe. So, like this is just a little anecdote, but as one example of that, we had, there's lots of black bears here in Maine, and we have lots of black bears on our site, beautiful animals. Black bears are not aggressive as some people fear. They basically, if they hear you, they will run away. It's hard to catch a glimpse of a black bear because they're not generally, fighting animals. So we had a black bear get into our trash can that, they're great sense of smell, right? And so we had a trash can down at our new back of house building. We call it the utility building, where I've got my commercial kitchen and our commercial laundry and everything we need to run the operations. And we just had like a big trash can. I could see it coming a mile away. I knew a bear was going to get in there, or some critter. A bear found it, like trash everywhere, all over the backyard. And we said, okay, well, this is going to be an ongoing thing, right? We have to learn to be with these black bears and how do we do that safely? Because it's actually not good at all to be feeding black bears trash or even good food, because it's basically you're making them dependent on you. They start coming to that food source. We want them to live their natural lives and eat what they would normally eat. So for best practice, you always want to discourage black bears from getting in your trash. And so we had to, we found this great company, Barracuda. I'll plug for them right now they're based in Connecticut. They have a plant in Colorado. And they make these great, like, bear-proof trash enclosures. I had a moment where I was like, apparently I'm an adult now. I just spent $3,000 on a trash can. That is so rugged that you can put these three big bins in it and the bears can't get in. But that's an example of like, okay, we're going to work with our surroundings instead of, put fencing up so that bears can't come near us. It's like, this is part and parcel of being on a mountain. There's going to be black bears here in Maine. But how can we put these little clever things in? And that's just one example, but how can we work with our environment and be a part of it without hurting it, as opposed to trying to dominate it or bulldoze it or put a chain link fence around it?
That's a fantastic story. So many people suffer from thinking that it's the them or us with the wildlife and the humans, and it's not. You're actually saying, let's work together, let's be together, and actually we can benefit each other. And what you were saying earlier about wellness and using what you've got around you to help you with whatever illness you have. I mean, we are suffering so much from all kinds of mental health problems since the pandemic, since lockdown. We're now going into cost of living crisis, bank crisis, everything else. And people are going to chemists. They are getting the drugs because they think that's what they need. There's so many things in nature that can help us instead. So, for example, depression, you can use the inside of a flower. So the flower stigma, I think it's called, which is saffron, which is something native to Spain, but there's other sources of it around the world. And that has been shown to be a cure for depression. This has got scientific research behind it. So actually you could say, I don't need to go to the chemist. Actually, I've got the chemist in nature. And the benefit is there's no side effects. So do you think you could be providing through what you do kind of life-changing experiences?
I do. And that is a great hope of ours. I mean, one example that I think of when you're talking about these, like the prescriptive model versus a more natural model, So one of our amenities is called the Forest Therapy Trail. So we have what is soon to be, and probably within the next 2 months, we've been working on this for the better part of a year, New England's first certified forest therapy trail. And so what that means, a lot of people say, well, how is it different than just a walking trail in the woods? And the forest therapy trail essentially follows a sequence. They call it the standard sequence at ANFT. I think it's Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. That's the certifying body. And so there's a certain kind of path that you want to unfold as you're having an experience in nature. And there's usually a guide that leads you. And there's water features, and there's rock features, and there's older growth, and there's some openings with sun and some more shady areas. And so you try and incorporate all these features so that the guide can lead a group of people through there and have really a mindful experience in the forest. Because to say to people, well, go have a mindful experience in the forest, they might go in the forest and go, now what? I don't know what to do. How do I go be mindful in the forest? I don't know what that means. So this is intended to the guides just sort of gently tries to coax this experience out of you and give you maybe an object to focus on. Like, okay, here, let's stop at this little invitation area and choose something that you see right now in the forest, and an object that's loose, and pick it up and just spend a few moments with it. Spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes with it and see what it tells you, what story it has to tell you. So this experience of forest therapy, guided forest therapy, is really like a wellness thing, like you were saying before. But people actually are getting to the point now, doctors and practitioners are literally prescribing this, are saying you need to go walk in the forest. The data is real. You can say, okay, if you walk in the forest for half an hour 3 times a week, there's studies that show that all your different serotonin levels change, people's outlooks are improved. There are endorphins that are released. This is really the experience that people need to feel better. So I feel like this is kind of absolutely what you say, sort of this alternative, a natural alternative to the pharmaceutical model. And so I really hope that when people come and walk on the forest therapy trail, that maybe they're just prompted. We're trying to give everybody all the tools and put all the conditions in place so that they can experience this sort of like a serendipity or some emotional experience that comes over them. It's very hard to just say, well, go have an emotional experience. I don't know how to do that either on command. But if all of the conditions are right and a path has been laid out for me, literally in the case of the forest therapy trail and just figuratively in general, that is where the conditions are right for me to have that experience, I'm much more likely to have a life-changing experience or an epiphany about something in my life. A lot of times people walking on the forest therapy trail will say that they ended up seeing some sort of analogy of their life in the experience of walking through the trail. And everybody is going to perceive that differently because we're all unique, right? But whatever message the forest has for you, it tends to give you when you have this very slow and intentional walk through it. So yeah, I hope that happens for people here.
Yeah, I think getting again connected to the genius loci, the spirit of the land, I think is something that we all miss, and we don't realize how much we need it. Our bodies physically need it. So we know that because when we step into nature, as you're saying there, the stress markers that our body is showing, blood pressure, everything else just goes down, and we suddenly feel relieved from all of these negative symptoms of the modern day. And you're opening up your area and making it accessible to people who wouldn't normally be able to see it and wouldn't be able to access it. So you've talked a lot about your guest experience. You've talked a bit about the types of structures that you've got on the land. Have you thought about sustainability of those structures and the off-gridness of them? I'm sure that your land, actually, you're not able to do anything any different. It's going to have to be that. So how have you set up those off-grid systems?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So sustainability and a light footprint on the land has been foundational to our model from the start. So one of the things that we've done is we've hired a wildlife ecologist, and she is actively working with us now to develop what we're calling a biodiversity and conservation plan. Essentially, it's a stewardship plan. It's how we have 500 acres that we are privileged to be the stewards of. How are we going to take care of it in the best possible way that conserves biodiversity and conserves all the native flora and fauna here? And because I think the reality, there's this sort of debate about humanity, right? Like, are we separate? And, the animals and all that and the plants, that's nature, but we're this other thing that's outside of it. And should we preserve that in a bubble that we like leave no trace, like we don't touch it, we just look at it as this sort of passive third party, versus do we engage in it and have an impact on it? And I think that it's critical to realize that we are part of it and we are going to have an impact on it, whether we like it or not. The problem has been that the way we've impacted it in the past has historically been very dominating, right? And negatively impactful and irreverent of the things that were already there. We're trying to build this model where if we can simply honor the things that are already here and say, we're going to have an impact. Let's think how we can mitigate that impact or make it actually beneficial, symbiotic for the other beings, life forms that are on this land. That is the model that we're trying to create. So when it comes to sustainability, besides the wildlife biologists, we've also joined the Old Growth Forest Network. We're actually the first forest in Maine to be a part of the Old Growth Forest Network, which simply means that we have committed to having this land not commercially logged or harvested and have it becoming an old growth asset for our community and for the world. There's a lot of benefits to old growth forests, and I encourage listeners to look it up because there's too many to list here. So these sort of things are built into our process, right? Where, having an off-grid endeavor, we had to say, okay, what do we want electricity to look like? Because we do want our guests to have fully functional kitchens and running water and the ability to cook and have, tools at their disposal. But everything for us has been this process of balance. Like we said, okay, why do you have to have an electric coffee grinder, right? Bzz, that's one more thing that takes electricity. If we're trying to have a light footprint, a little solar array, and a small amount of electricity that comes, what are the things we can back off on? So there's lots of things that we've built into our own lives that we said, this would be great to share with guests. Like this, we have this beautiful Italian cast iron hand crank coffee grinder. It takes 100 cranks maybe, so like 5 minutes in the morning to just go through and grind that coffee. But the process of it releases the aroma of the beans, and you're smelling that while you're grinding, and kind of wakes up your body a little, just moving your arm a little when you're just kind of sleepy in the morning. So we think that things like that, being intentional about building in non-electrical devices, some manual things to help engage you and you get side benefits from anyway. But on top of that, reduces the burden of having everything be instant, right? There's a lot of benefit that comes from this slower process of just physically doing things. We think. So that's what we're trying to make available to guests and do it in a way that makes our whole operation a lot more sustainable, low energy, low impact.
Some of the best glamping sites definitely have those intentional inconveniences to help remind their guests that they really are in nature. They're in the middle of it, and they're having to step back a little bit from all of the modern conveniences. And actually, that's really important, and it's really good for them to do that. And it's somehow, certainly I feel that anyway, it actually makes you question when you go back home, do I really need all of these things? Do I really need all of these belongings? This is actually a big burden for me. I'm carrying these things around with me in my life. And, are my children going to be burdened by all of this stuff when I'm gone? So actually, it does make us think about what we're doing and maybe even consider that we might want to make a few changes. But I suppose what you're going to be doing as well is you're going to be really attracting to you those people who really connect with that message and that ethos, and pushing away those people that actually know, I want to keep all of my modern conveniences. I don't want any of that. And actually, that's fine, because that's what we need to be doing, because we can't be everything to everyone, can we? As businesses, we need to only attract those people who are really going to believe in what we're creating. Are you doing that in things that you're doing with your marketing, do you think? Is that something that you believe you're going to be able to achieve through social media and everything else that you've decided that you're going to do? Tell me a bit about that and how you're approaching all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's critical to do that. We realized through counseling with a number of different mentors, you being one of them, and other wonderful marketing industry experts and our fantastic web designers out of Portland, that essentially it's critical to just own who you are and what you are doing and convey that clearly. Like you said, you can't be everything to everyone. This experience is absolutely not for everyone. So that's like the classic marketing message, like something for everyone. Nope, we are not. We're not. That message is outdated. We need to be very clear about the type of experience we're having, frankly, so that people don't show up in a pair of, stilettos with a suitcase full of dresses and thinking it's going to be like this glamorous, sit in a 5-star restaurant with a chef serving you something and you can take a picture with some trees in the background. This is really more hands-on, and it's critical that people understand that, so that the people who will have a great time here and embrace this type of experience are the ones that show up, and not the people who wouldn't want to be here. I don't want that for them any more than they want to be here. So you do have to be really clear in your marketing. So some things that we're doing, for example, are, really the website is the biggest source of information about who we are, right? So we're trying to be very clear and nuanced about, in every decision we make on that website, to show, for instance, in the amenities, one of our sections on the website that we're building says, power, something like equipped with your elbow grease, right? It's not just all the icons. Usually it shows amenities like a pool, a hair dryer, whatever for hotels. We're having like a hand crank coffee grinder, a wood stove that you're going to build the fire in, right? So we're showing these different things to make it clear that for those who relish this type of hands-on experience, you're in. And for those who that actually sounds scary and horrible and uncomfortable, there's plenty of other places that you can go and be happy. So yeah, it's critical, I think, to convey that, because if the wrong types of people come who don't succeed here, they'll just write a bad review, and then it's bad for us and it's bad for them. They had a bad time and we look bad. So this is who we are. Let's be clear about it. Let's own it and communicate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Set those expectations in the right place and make sure people know exactly what they're going to get. And then obviously over deliver when they come to you. So then they're going to give you a great review, but they're stepping through the door because they know exactly what they're going to be getting when they get there.
Yes.
So one of the things as well that's really impressed me about what you've done is how good you've been with your business planning and your research and engaging the professionals at every stage of your process. You've also been really, really successful with investment. So if you were to give one piece of advice to someone else who is at that stage of their journey and they want to be where you are now, they want to get their business up and running and they want to seek investment, what would you say was one of the biggest success factors for you achieving that investment?
There's so many little tactical on the ground things that I could tell you, but I think for me, the single most important thing that this thing will determine your success or your failure, in my humble opinion, and that is staying true to your vision. You have a unique vision. I'm talking to any potential ground owner or, unique accommodation aspiring entrepreneur. Everybody has their own unique contribution that they're destined to give the world. And in your heart of hearts what it is. Deep down, like, this is the thing I'm good at. This is the thing I'm passionate about. This is the thing I love. That is specific to you. And there are certainly trends in every industry, right? Like the glamping industry trends that I was noticing when we broke into it were, for example, increasing amounts of luxury. Like the tents were getting more and more luxurious, chandeliers in tents and chefs that would actually come to your tent. And even though that was the trend and people were like, oh, you expect people to go do work themselves? Like that's not where the industry's going. And we said, you know what? But it was hard to disagree in the beginning because you have no clout. You have no one that believes in your dream yet. You feel alone in it and you're just like, and you doubt yourself and you say, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe no one is going to do this. But for us, our vision was, we believe there are other people who really want to just be like, create their experience more and be pushed and challenged. And if we believe in that, then that's what we're going to do. So there was some self-doubt in the beginning, but we had to come to a place where we said, this is our vision. Let's just be unapologetic about our vision and not try to gloss it over and make it look like what everyone else is doing. Just have confidence that your vision is something the world needs right now. I truly believe that every single person has something to offer the world that the world is desperately in need of right now. And that's why you're here. So just believe in that. And I know it can be so hard to do when everybody around you, and there's so many naysayers all the time. Usually they're people who are not following their dreams. And just ignore that as much as you can. Put that out of your head. Trust your vision, because that is the thing that's ultimately going to speak to people and ultimately going to get an investor. People who have a lot of money, this is not without exception, but people who have a lot of money to invest in things like this typically got there because they have a pretty big picture perspective. And they're saying to themselves, they're looking at every potential investment and saying, is this something that's destined for success? And they can see it, I think, in your eyes when it's something that is that you're passionate about and that you believe in and that you're here to give, versus sort of like a fear in your eyes of like, I'm going to do this because I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing and what everyone expects of me. And that is like, nah, no, nobody can get behind that, So have a vision that people can get behind. I think that is more powerful advice than any like specific thing about how to grow your network of high net worth individuals or how to speak to banks or what to make your P&L look like.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, the conversations that I've had with investors, they have always said, every single one of them has said, they invest in the individual first. And if they're invested in the individual, then they look at everything else that's backing up their investment, what they're proposing. But yeah, I could not agree with you more. I think that's a fantastic summary of it. And actually what you're doing, you and John, what you're doing with your family is so inspirational. And I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who would love to follow in your footsteps and do something that you've done. So if somebody wants to speak with you some more or come and visit your services, how do they contact you? Is that best through your website? And what's your website address?
Yes. So www.coalburnedspoon.com. So we currently have a nice landing page set up that at least gives you some background of the fact that we're in development and what we have going on and a little bit about me and John. And the active, big full website, which I'm so excited to deploy. I can't wait to do that. That is actively under development now. We're currently generating content for it, right? We have to actually have some really great pictures of the things as they're becoming built. We're starting to photograph them. But until we get all that content, we can't launch the big site. That is projected for spring. So spring is when that's about probably 6 months. Spring is 6 months before we plan to open. And that's when we'll launch the Grand website. But in the meantime, you can get in touch with me on that website. There's a contact portal and just learn a little bit about what we're up to.
And I'm hoping that you will be able to spare some time from your incredibly busy schedule and come and visit the Glamping show in Colorado in October. It'll be incredible to see you there.
Oh yeah. John and I have, as you know, we've attended a few times in the past. We went when it was in Long Beach and we went to one in Denver, and it's always been such a beneficial experience. Anytime we go to that, we learn so much, and it's just so helpful to be around all of these people that are in the same shoes as you, struggling with the same challenges, and just like-minded folks. It's like your tribe, you feel like you're with your tribe when you're there. So I'm very hopeful to make it. We're going to give it the best shot we can despite our active construction schedule.
Oh, well, I've got my fingers crossed for that one. And actually, the tribe has grown. It's a lot bigger. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in the industry. So I cannot wait to hear more about your project. And when the doors officially open, when you're accepting guests and guest bookings and everything else. And I'm really excited to follow your story. And I have no doubt we will speak again very, very soon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
See you soon.
All right.